Oof, almost let that slip and continue talking. Um, but where was I? I was in Yeah, I was actually just going to produce the all instances list that we created as the class attribute just to see what happened after creating items, sorry, creating objects by reading into the CSV in invoice. So that should look like order one dot all instances and fingers crossed. And so that is perfect. So that added all of the items and that's perfect. That is great. Now, technically, similarly, we can go to our primary, our main constructor, and we can add the same capability by doing item dot all instances dot append, and we can simply just add that into self. So that way, anytime the constructor is called, depending on how the class is called and which constructor is used, it will store in that value. So in here, we call first, like we actually hard code the first object, and then we also go ahead and call an additional, we call in an additional constructor. So that's there as well. Perfect. So we can see that bonsai was first created, then came cactus, and I wonder why is it that there are two of each. There are two of each. I wonder why there are two of each. Um, okay, so instead of passing that, what if I just do now? Okay. All right. Oops. Right. And then just do CLS dot all instances. In this case, that will show us, go ahead and comment that out. So now we have bonsai, then we have two of cactus, two of item. Class method from DBS, okay, from CSV. Let's see if that's being right. So that's me just trying to figure out why are we having two repeat values essentially. I don't have repeat values there, so okay. Dot append, okay. Class is all. It's interesting that we are having this little issue on the go, but that is fine. So we have the list being created, then we have it being iterated through which we're creating these. Then is it that okay, maybe that's what the issue is. Right. So okay, item. What if I was to do this? Right. So what I quickly just deciphered was that bonsai cactus. Okay, so in this case, we are reading it all once because Okay, because we are getting that. If I do this. Okay. Interesting. So that is so just having a little bit of trouble. Well, not trouble, but just in my instantiation. So I am also saving the any object that's created into this all instances, and as well as from the constructor. Right. So in this case, we are able to create it. Now, if I do add in this additional append, it actually appends twice, which makes me think that when this is inside the alternative constructor, when we are creating each object, in return, it's also, is it that it's also, mhm. Also notice that the bonsai, the order date is not really added on. Why not? Um, hmm. It should be by default, it should be producing this, but it's not. And we're also not seeing order dot date time, order date. Okay, this should produce it, right? Oh, right, because because we haven't added that in. That's why. Order date. Now that should be fine. Let me take this out and comment this, and let's see. So all of these have created their own timestamps. And if I was to rerun it, it would be completely different as expected. 53, 50, yep, perfect. Okay. Now what else are we at? Where else are we at? So we added the alternative constructor, and I'm thinking like for additional revisions, I could also be adding like constructing the object through database calls, like storing or essentially calling on any records that exist in the database, and etc. Now, the other thing is that I learned for getters and setters. I'm going to start off with getters. And so essentially, getters are sorry. So in order the reason you use setter getter is because if you have a read only attribute, you want to be able to you call the getter in order to show when you're outside of the instance instead of calling the getter instead of calling the read only value itself like directly. What I mean by that is this right here in self object. I'm sorry, in order date. This is now a read only attribute, right? But we need to be able to call that. Right now, what I just quickly did was I took out the double underscore and I only added on I just left on one. Now what that did was from here, if I was to call it, what was the I should have kept the other one. So we can see that, and we are so we are calling the order date attribute, which has a single underscore. That technically highlights read only, but it really isn't a read only yet, right? Because if we were to do, I'm just trying things out just to see as the curiosity creeps upon me. Let's just call it 0. will it allow us that? Okay. To moment of truth. Does it go from an actual date time to just a simple integer? Yes, it did. Now, what I earlier said was that a single underscore highlights a read, like a read only attribute. The way you make it, like the other step that you have to include in it, is by using a decorator called property. You're going to set this attribute as read only. How? By under this decorator, the decorator essentially just changes the function, I guess the way the function executes. I haven't looked into the actual definition yet, but now I'm going to go ahead and create a function or a method, since it's inside the class, with the exact same name as the attribute that we're trying to make read only, right? And this part right here is the getter that we are setting up. So here we are, and let's just call it return self underscore order, right? Now, remember how we were calling this with the single underscore, which is fine for now, but right after that, we try changing the value. Let's see what happens. Oh, okay. That didn't exactly go through. Oh, because we are calling it from the underscore, we're calling the actual the attribute, which is not really read only yet. But now, if you were to call it without the single underscore, that's calling the getter, and that's in return, it's saying that, hey, you can't change the value because this is a read only attribute right now. And to completely hide it away from it showing up, we would actually do a double underscore. And you would also change that in the getter function itself. And there we are, back to both being blue. And here from VS Code so far, I have noticed that the double underscore, they still show up, like the double underscore attributes still show up. However, that was weird. Oh, okay. Right, it still shows up as double underscore, but if we try to if I try to call it, it actually says that, hey, it doesn't exist. Like, it doesn't exist. So we're calling the read only, then we're trying to set it, which is going to cause an error. But now in this case, it's also going to say that, hey, it doesn't exist. So what do? We simply call the getter only, just like we were doing it here. Same thing, right? Yeah. So that's that. So that's getters in a nutshell. And I also learned that anytime the getter is called, any code that's within until the return function, return statement, it's also going to get executed. So if I was to do row from property, it's actually going to show us that. Cool. I'm going to take that out. I'm going to take that out, take that out. So that is that so far. Setters, I haven't learned that. Maybe in the next iteration of the video I'm going to add in, but that's pretty much it. Thank you.